Welcome to Retail Retold, the stories behind how that store landed in your neighborhood. I'm Chris Ressa, in conversation with the people and stories shaping retail and real estate. Brought to you by DLC. Welcome to Retail Retold, everyone. Today I am joined by a good friend of mine, Andrew Mahr. I'm excited for him to be here. Andrew is a partner at Bilo Real Estate. We've been friends for a long time. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Chris, thanks so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah.
Great to be here. Great to celebrate our friendship and our working relationship.
Yeah, man, this is awesome.
Yeah,
So, Andrew, why don't you tell everyone, for those who don't know, a little bit about who you are and Bilo Real Estate?
sure. So I'm a partner at Bilo Real Estate. Myself personally, I love to travel, be active in general, big skier, love swimming, tennis, been running a lot as of late. I'm currently training for my second Boston Marathon, running in support of Mass General Hospital and their children's oncology and hematology division. So a lot of miles out there in the cold here in Boston. Um, with all that, my favorite thing in the world to do is spend time with my family, my wife Julia, and my two wonderful children, Maxine and Elias.
Amazing. So, if you were to run a mile today, what's your mile time?
Miles about, let's call it 9:18. I'm not too fast, but I'm gonna get it done.
5K.
Just did one on New Year's. I did it in 27 minutes
All right.
while pushing a stroller.
And is there a goal for the Boston Marathon, or is it just a finish?
My goal is 4 hours and 18 minutes. I
All
ran
right.
it once before, did it close to the 5 hour mark. I've never been a big runner, but always been someone who's an advocate of those in need. And running with Mass General Hospital has been a wonderful experience for me this year. And previously, when I ran it in 2014, the year after the Boston Marathon bombing, at Heartbreak Hill, if you're familiar with the Boston Marathon, that's where the organization is planted, cheering you on with signs, and there's children going through chemotherapy treatment with lost limbs, cheering you on and really rooting for you. And I had an interesting moment when I ran it in 2014. I came up upon Rick and Dick Hoyt, if you're familiar with those guys. And they were running, it was actually Dick's last marathon that he ran with Rick. And I just lost two toenails. Was struggling and was feeling the pain. And then you get to Heartbreak Hill, which is around mile 22. And it just put it all into perspective of, we can do it. We're cheering on these kids. And that year we raised $1 million for the pediatric division of Mass General.
Wow.
And we're working to do it again this year.
That's amazing. Good for you.
Yeah.
What a good
Yeah.
story.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So, tell us a little bit more about Bilo Real Estate.
Yep. So Byler Real Estate, we're a national master broker. We provide all the traditional functions of an internal real estate department on an outsourced basis. For some of our clients, we are the real estate department. We also work with larger companies who have an in-house team, and we work with them in a support capacity to help facilitate and expedite their expansion. As you know, most of our clients we handle nationally. And what's unique about us is that between our entire team, we have firsthand knowledge and experience within every major metropolitan statistical area in the country. I travel, 1 to 2 days a week, as well as the balance of our team. And when we have a new account or a new market requirement for an existing account, we don't need to learn a new market. There's no learning curve. We've been doing this for many, many years. And as a company, we're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. So a really exciting milestone for Bilo Real Estate. And Bilo Real Estate was founded by Corey Bilo, to give you a little bit of background. So Corey, who's my business partner and one of my closest friends, he grew up in the retail business. He worked in his father's drugstore chain, Bilo Drugs. They had locations throughout the New York Metro. And funnily enough, my colleague, Anthony Genovese, and I share similar pharmacy roots. Anthony comes from Genevieve's Drugs and that family, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Sure.
Very well known, right, across the New York metro. And my grandfather founded Mahr's Pharmacy in Olean, New York, and later expanded throughout upstate. And what you know is funny about Olean is that's one of the first deals that we did together,
Yeah.
bringing Pet Supplies Plus to the project you guys used to own in Olean many, many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool story. So let's turn to the market. What are you seeing out there? We're starting 2026. For those who don't know, we're recording early in 2026 here. What are you seeing out there in the market right now?
Yeah, so we do national work, as I mentioned, and have excellent insight as to what's happening in retail on a national level. And I can tell you from personal experience that when people ask, how is the market doing? It's not consistent across the country. Most of the major urban environments that depended on daytime office population are struggling. You take Midtown Manhattan or the financial district in downtown Boston. In those markets, retail has not come back strong. It has in the Sohos, it has in the Back Bays. However, when you look at some of the best corners in Midtown, you'll see that there's still availability, and there's availability on every block. One of the things that's been consistent since COVID is this element of working from home, which has created a challenge. And companies are bringing back employees, whether it's a hybrid component of 2 days a week, 3 days a week, a front load or a back load of when you need to be in office. But what you've seen with that is, I mean, you look at the Boston suburbs as an example, removing the regional malls, if a good space comes available in a lifestyle center or a traditional retail center, there are 5 offers waiting in line to have that conversation and see if there's an opportunity to be created. So it's very competitive in the strong, the A markets, in the suburbs. And this is not unique to what's happening around the country in many of the major metro markets. The suburbs are doing well. This again started during COVID, and as a result, why is this happening, right? As a result, I think what you're seeing is that the majority of retail being built right now is mixed use, with very limited traditional retail being built on spec. And there's the challenges of interest rates being too high, making it too challenging, and then you layer in new construction costs. So that's been some headwind. um, I'm curious of your thoughts. However, I have spoken with many REITs with vacancy rates in the 1 to 2% range, and the consistent feedback is it won't pencil, it won't get appraised, costs are too high, etc.
Yeah, so what I think I was talking to a few retailers today. What I'm seeing is so I think this year in 2026 we have still a strong leasing velocity, right? So momentum in leasing is still strong. You mentioned 5 offers, 1 space. Additionally, in 2025, in the beginning, we had 2 events, in my opinion, that stymied the year a little bit. We had tariffs, where it created a lot of uncertainty. And then we had major bankruptcies and bankruptcies aren't new, but they were of chains that were of massive scale. Joanne, Rite Aid, Big Lots.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe that we're through the tariff uncertainty. We have much less visible bankruptcy risk than we did as an industry in 2025. And with the big, beautiful bill, potential interest rates going down for middle America, who's in those suburbs, I think consumer discretionary income is going to be higher this year than last year. Those 3 things colliding, I think, are going to produce, just supply and demand economics, higher rents. However, I think you see that in multiple ways. I think the biggest change from the Great Recession in 2007, 2008 to 2020 in retail real estate that nobody talks about was just the dynamic of how deals got done. Majority of the deals that got done pre 2008 were done via tenant contribution of capital to the space to get open. That really, call it as is, that really flipped in 2008 to 2020. It's why, even though we had the retail apocalypse narrative, we had an e-commerce, and we had this crazy GFC event, we still had a lot of stores opening between 2008 and 2020. And the reason being is they were backed by landlords turnkeying space, and retailers were like, all right, free space, I'll figure it out. And I
Yeah,
think, I
it
think,
helps. It helps when they get you 50% of the way there.
right? And I think what you're starting to see now is, at some point, sales projections, it's like I either blow up the pro forma, I'm at my max rent. And what you're seeing now, which is still higher than probably in-place rents today, but what you're starting to see now is a little bit of tilting where, okay, how do we get the cost to install a tenant a little more balanced between tenant and landlord to get the deal done? Which is the same way as saying rents are rising. It might not show up in the same way as a face rent, like, well, the rent's 25 versus 20, but it's showing up in either a lower TI or a lower cost. And I think you're starting to see that. I'm seeing it a lot on the junior anchor side now, where and retailers are going, well, we have all this cash, the strong ones. What's the best way to deploy it? Like, and if you got a good return on your investment from in a store, well, maybe the best place to do is put it in a store, and I can manage some of my fixed occupancy costs long term. And so I think, like, what you're going to see, to your point of like it doesn't pencil, is that starting to crack a little bit. Well, how do we get it to pencil? Obviously, I could just pay you hundreds of more dollars in rent, but and I think rents are going to rise, but I also think you're going to have this other side. Well, maybe they don't rise as much as expectations, but the cost to install a tenant gets more balanced.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's necessary. And, I think that there's a difference between, retailers in different categories, right? You look at the QSR space, you look at the grocery space, margins are different. So you can't be competitive against a Raising Cane's or a Wawa or Chick-fil-A who's doing a big ground lease. That doesn't work for a lot of concepts.
Yeah,
So
everybody's different for sure. Uh,
everybody's different. Yeah.
Everybody's different. I think.
Yeah.
I think the thing I'm excited about though is that there's definitely some challenging tenants out there, but every sector has strong winners, and there's more and more strong winners. And I like what I would call just the variety of tenant out there. You just look at
Definitely.
a lot of the tenants you're working with today. Some of them weren't really doing stores 20 years ago, or maybe didn't exist.
No, yeah, it's interesting you say that. As a company, a category that we've been putting a big emphasis on, and something that's become a big part of our business, is the hospitality and wellness space. So Bilo Real Estate as a company, we're representing some of the most prominent restaurant brands in the country. Groups such as Major Food Group, Avra, who's taken one of the premier locations here in Boston that is under construction and will be opening soon. Casa Tua, Mother Wolf, to name a few. And then, you look on the social wellness side, right? That's a category that's brand new. And the biohacking side of, people putting, their physical wellness and mental health right up top. We're working with serotonin centers. They're an anti-aging facility, and we're working with Remedy Place. So Remedy is a social wellness concept. They're two very different models. Remedy's leading the high-profile urban social wellness category, and serotonin has taken more of an approach to the suburban markets while still being able to be successful in some of the urban environments, more of the traditional suburban markets, and offering really kind of four different buckets of business for health and wellness. So that's been really exciting. You were talking about, things that you see happening within the market, and we are seeing activity with restaurant concepts, excuse me, where there's new development looking for the hottest new concept to anchor their hotel. You see on the
Interesting.
condo and mixed use side, it's a little bit different, right? Yeah, you're seeing the hotel component, exciting restaurants. On the condo and mixed use side, more service oriented. So groups like dry cleaners, banks, convenience stores, grocery stores. And in those scenarios, retail's kind of the tail wagging the dog. And it's been interesting to see that unfold.
Very cool. Um, so one of the things about the core of this show and a lot of the episodes is we tell some deal stories, some war stories. And I know you have one in North Miami with about a Wild Forks, and why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so Wild Fork is an amazing brand that we're supporting on a national level. We have 65 locations open today. This actually was the 65th store that opened. The store is situated at 123rd and Biscayne. Grand opening is scheduled for Saturday, January 24th for all the listeners based in Miami. And this was a really exciting flagship unit that we opened up in North Miami. And for buy low real estate, when we look at markets, we approach most markets in a fundamentally different way than you would expect. A client says, "Hey, we want to be in this specific submarket, such as North Miami." We don't start by reviewing what's currently available. Instead, we reverse engineer, right? We look at, what's the single best intersection and then target that location directly. Single best intersection, single best site. In this case, we were expanding, again, a national tenant backed by JBS. So JBS is a publicly traded company with exceptional credit and financial strength. I was looking earlier today, the market cap is just over $15 billion. And, a lot of people see Wild Fork and think of it as a startup meat and seafood concept and market. And, the reality is it's one of the most exciting brands in a category that they've created, fresh frozen. They've created this and we're aggressively expanding it across the country. So, for Wild Fork, it's A plus real estate, main and main locations, period, hard stop. And after thoroughly canvassing the North Miami market, we identified the premier intersection. And the property actually was locally owned and not on the market. And the landlord who we reached out to indicated that the site was not available. So for us, rather than walking away, we said, would you be open to a conversation? I'd love to just give you some information on our client who's interested should things change down the road for you. And we shared the tenant's financial strength, our long-term vision as a brand, and through a series of discussions, we were ultimately able to get the landlord comfortable to listening to why we made sense. And um, they determined actually that they could reposition the existing tenant and create the opportunity for Wild Fork. So, this was the result of not only securing the best site in the market, also negotiating, the best. Let me start over that one. This was a result not only securing the best site in the market, but also negotiating best in market economics. The store again is at 123rd and Biscayne, and it's just down the street from Ball Harbor Shops, which is wildly regarded as the top retail project in the country on a sales per square foot basis. And that's a big win. Really excited and proud of that.
Very, very cool. I think the this off market premise, right? It, I would think like even today in today's market, this should be more of a thought process, right? Like there's not a lot of vacancy in the market, so you guys are already going and attacking things that are already leased because you're just going for the right location, whether a tenant's there or not. That's where you're going to target. Obviously, so many people start with, well, what's available in the marketplace? And you have a different approach to it of what's the best site, regardless if it's available. Um, obviously
Yeah, in some
that
capacity, right?
yeah, in some capacity, obviously that strategy works with a patient operator, right? If you're in the I need 1,000 locations in the next 2 years because here's my that's more of a challenge, right? Like it's hard to
Mhm.
you have to do both, right? You have to have some yeah, well, we're going to take available spaces when they're available, but we're also not scared to attack the unavailable spaces.
Yeah, and look, that comes with experience, right? You personally can go into any market and say, I think that concept's going to make it. I think that they might have some headwind. That could be becoming a busier category in space, and I see opportunity for someone who's doing things better than the rest. And as a company, we've taken lessons. I was mentioning earlier some of the familial roots in retail, and we've taken these lessons and pride into, being in consumer businesses to support our clients. We want consistency from a real estate characteristic standpoint and a site characteristic standpoint in order to be successful. Corey, who I mentioned, he spent many years as an in-house representative for a few companies. Most notably, I would say, the Vitamin Shop, right? Corey led the real estate and construction division of the Vitamin Shop, and he started there when they were a 19-store brand based in Metro New York, and grew them to a national brand with over 750 locations across the country. So, acting as the real estate here, the team here, we work with all the different aspects of the organization, guiding deal negotiation, financial model, presenting to the board, and you hit on it really well. If you have a national vision and plan, you can plan accordingly, right? You want the A plus real estate, you want to be on the going to work side of the street or the going home side of the street. You need great access. You can be patient from that standpoint, and execute that plan and keep that consistency. And for a lot of our clients, we like to say, uh, your real estate is a part of your marketing, and you have to stand behind it. Um, and it's worked really well for a lot of groups. Vitamin Shop is a great example of that.
For sure. When you go and you're bringing a space that's occupied to a client, what's the typical reaction?
Well, for us, it's all about relationships. Relationships on the landlord side with partners like yourself, relationships with the retailers, and there's a mindset of, people are kind of all in it together, right? So I've got a committee presentation for a client tomorrow, and I've got 5 new deals we're presenting. 2 of those deals are off market, complex deals where there's an assignment with one of them, um, and we're negotiating a termination from the existing tenant to the landlord and working through the rent commencement date period, and creating opportunity for our clients. So I think that ultimately there's a lot of excitement from our clients, right? You and I were talking about it in New York in December. When you say off market, people's ears perk up, right? They like that. It feels like you're getting that first shot on goal, which is exciting.
Yeah, it is the most seductive word in our industry, I think, when someone says off market. It doesn't matter which side of the business you're on, whether
Right.
you're a tenant, landlord, broker, lender, off
Yeah,
market is like the most seductive word in the industry.
it is.
Um,
Yeah,
it really is. It really is so seductive. And what is interesting is like, I think the amount of things that are truly off market are probably less than we want to believe because we
definitely.
want so badly to believe that it's off market. For some reason, it's like it's such a seduction.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good one. Well,
But yeah. But look, I think that the relationship component is what's a big focus for us. Relationships with people again like yourself, and also groups that are growing. For Bilo Real Estate, almost all of our clients are referral driven. coming directly from retailers and ownership groups we partnered with successfully in the past. As a company, we have regular meetings, and we're not out making cold calls and cold calling concepts and doing that stuff. We're working alongside companies where there's already trust, there's alignment, and there's a proven track record. I hesitate, we're master brokers, but I hesitate to use the term broker as it doesn't really fully reflect the advisory driven approach or the long-term partnership that we focus on building. So that aspect is very, very important.
Cool. Well, listen, Andrew, this has been great. I really appreciate the time today, and looking forward to getting our deal done in Massachusetts.
Me as well. Chris, I want to just close with one thing and say thank you. And the reality is in the retail business, a strong landlord partnership can accelerate a national rollout overnight. Many struggle in negotiations with landlords and they view it as an adversarial relationship. But DLC is doing business the right way. You guys, you and Adam have done wonderful things. And, a single transaction can turn into hundreds of deals. And that comes from trust and alignment and positive relationships with people like you. So thanks for having me and looking forward to doing a lot of business together this year and the years to come.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words, Andrew. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate you watching. Hit subscribe. See you in the next one.